What a delightful little story. The Sontaran Experiment is the first two-part serial since the rescue 10 seasons ago with William Hartnell. It's particularly interesting to watch such a comparatively short story in Classic Who because they offer a slightly different kind of storytelling than we normally get in the show. This one is just rather engaging, and it's got this very specific feel to it that fits right in line with the previous Hinchcliffe story. I'm going to be as vague as possible before I get into spoilers because I don't want to give too much away about this story for those who haven't seen it, but I am going to talk about the first part of this one. We pick up where we left off from the arc in space with the Doctor, Sarah Jane, and Harry having just transmatted down to Earth, just to check that everything's alright. One thing this story did for a decent part of its first half was separate our key characters from one another. I won't talk about specifically why this happens, but it's done well, and it doesn't feel like the story was manufactured in such a way that they would be able to get the characters alone. To compare this to the previous story, it was written that the Doctor ignored Sarah Jane so that she would be able to walk into a room and get trapped, separating her from Harry and the Doctor. This episode doesn't really rely on things like that, where you can feel the writer manipulating the story in specific ways. It does feel much more natural, and it is very interesting to see these characters on their own. The first part focuses a little more on Sarah Jane and the Doctor respectively, which I think worked. It gives us these two different perspectives of our main characters being alone. Sarah Jane is wandering on her own, rather worried about the situation, and I like getting to see that character do things and react to situations by herself. It's not something particularly unique, we got this a decent amount in the previous season, but this is one of the instances where it works a bit better. And also, while this is a notable part of the story, in the grand scheme of things, this one is under an hour long, so it's not like everybody was split up for that much time. As far as the Doctor is concerned, he actually finds himself getting kidnapped, and we get some really enjoyable moments from him with his kidnappers, which I just love.
All right. Now talk.
Certainly. What would you like me to talk about?
So I do enjoy all of our main characters. I think Harry gets a little less to do in the first part, and a little bit more in the second one, and I think the reverse is true of Sarah Jane. I do really like Sarah Jane, and obviously she has great chemistry with the Doctor, so she's working very well for me. Harry is still pretty good. I'm enjoying him. He's charismatic and kind of fun, though occasionally he does have moments that I don't really enjoy, like when he discredits Sarah Jane's claim that she saw something, although admittedly this is one of those things that's a wider problem than just this episode. It's seen in more Doctor Who and more TV than just this one story. It's just an annoying thing to see crop up, having a main character ignore the claims of another main character and basically just brush them off as crazy. It's a very common trope, maybe a little less so back in the 70s, but I'm a little sick of seeing it.
What's that?
What?
Shh, listen.
I can't hear anything.
It's over there.
Oh, come on, Sarah, you're imagining things. There's been no life on Earth for 10,000 years.
Well, look, we don't know that, do we? There could be anything here.
Such as what?
I don't know. Mutations? Creatures?
Come on.
Maybe this is just a personal pet peeve, but why do writers feel the need to pointlessly have characters not believe each other for no particularly good reason? Really, Harry? She's imagining things? I'm sorry, this stuff just kind of gets on my nerves, you know? This is a very enjoyable one, and as said before, its two-part runtime gives it a bit of a different flavor in a way that you don't see very often in Classic Who. I think it worked quite well with two parts, and it may have also worked with more parts, but they definitely would have had to add some element in this to extend that runtime. I can't really say whether or not that would work, but it definitely might have. Ultimately, the product that we got was solid and functioned well as just 2 parts long. And I can't get into too much more detail about this story without getting more into spoilers than I really feel comfortable doing, so if you want to skip the spoilers, jump ahead to the time shown on screen, and if you're sticking with me, then let's continue. The main thing I do really want to discuss about this story is the actual Sontaran. We're introduced to some rather strange ongoings within the first part of the story, but we don't meet the Sontaran until the end of the first half. And in the second part, we figure out that he's doing some military experiments on Earth in preparation for a Sontaran invasion. What this results in from a story perspective is that the main threat of this one isn't an army of Sontarans, it's Styr, the lone Sontaran. So it's coming at the Sontarans from a similar perspective to the Time Warrior, but it's a slightly different way that it goes about it, because where Lynx was stranded and working to get off the planet and toying with the humans to an extent, Styre is working for a larger group and his motivations are different. And while this is a slightly different angle to the previous Sontaran story, it does have a bit of a similar feeling to it because it is very much presented as a singular Sontaran working on his own as the threat of our story. And I think that worked quite well. There's something really enjoyable about the Sontarans as a singular threat, which is all they've been up to this point. I really enjoyed Styre. He's played by the same actor who portrayed Lynx. He was good in that story and he's good in this one too. I think the fact that they are doing slightly different things does help to differentiate the two, since they are played by the same actor and they are the same race, so they are going to be rather similar. I think he is a successfully intimidating foe, and I like how easy it is for this one Sontaran to basically just mess around on Earth with the help of his little robot device, which, by the way, I actually quite liked. It's just this really small robot that goes around and captures the humans for him, and it's such a simple thing, but it works quite well, and I like that Styre has so much equipment to work with, so that was cool. One of the things that to me added to the Sontaran was his look. I think he looks quite creepy, and the design both of his head and his suit is pretty distinctive and memorable. I also really like the Sontaran spaceship design. Those aspects don't always hold up, but I think this really does, and the spaceship and suit as well as his head are all relatively simple in design, but they really do stand out to me and they add a little bit to me being as engaged with this story as I was. I realized that I didn't talk a ton about Styre as a character, and that's really because he's a Sontaran, and he doesn't feel that notably different from the previous Sontaran, so I don't have a ton to add. While some might see this as a problem, I didn't really because I was still engaged with this serial, and it didn't bother me that it was ultimately just another Sontaran because I found this story quite engaging. The humans were an element of this one I wasn't sure how to feel about in the first part, because I just didn't find them that interesting, but they ended up tying into the actual reason the Sontaran was on Earth, so I can't really complain too much because they served a purpose in an aspect of the story that I liked. The Sontaran also performs some experiments on Sarah Jane, and we get to see her struggle with that. I thought that was kind of interesting, not mind-blowing or anything, it's just interesting to see a companion actually struggle with situations that are difficult. I significantly prefer this to the overdramatic reactions of, say, Susan when she would encounter situations that were even remotely taxing. Yeah, compared to that, this is a marked improvement. Overall, I found this to be a really enjoyable contained story. I enjoyed our main cast and was interested by everything set up in the first part, and enjoyed how it came together for the final part. I thought that Styre was quite a good portrayal of the Sontarans, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the story, and learning about what he was up to. This was a tight little story that I had a really good time with, and I'm going to give the Sontaran Experiment a rating of 8 out of 10. If you join me this coming Sunday, I'll be bringing you another Doctor Who ranking video. The Sunday after that is the much beloved episode of classic Doctor Who, Genesis of the Daleks. I hope you'll join me for one or both of those, but if you only watch one of those, I really hope it's the Genesis review because I'm putting a lot of time into that one. It's going to be quite long, and I hope you all like what it comes out to be, but if you don't join me for either of those, that is totally cool. But actually, for real, please watch my Genesis review because I spent so much time on that one, and if you don't, I'll be sad. But again, if you don't, that's totally cool. Just know that I appreciate your time here today. And with that said, thank you very much for watching. Take care and have a lovely week.